It's been a couple months since I did some figure drawing practice on my laptop, and I really enjoyed the last couple of times that I've done them, so I thought that I would do some more today. This first one was a pretty simple standing pose, so I thought that it would be a really good one to start off with, especially since it's been a little while since I've done these on my laptop, and I thought it would be a good way to get back into them. The last time I did some of these, I tried a little bit more of a painting approach to the poses and the values, and I think that this was a pretty good approach, but it was also a bit messier. If I remember, I was only using one brush and most sitting the one layer, I think, and this time I wanted to try something a little bit similar, but also a little bit different, so I'm starting this time with a very light color for the sketch and adding in some very basic values over that initial sketch. After I laid in some of the basic values, I went back over my sketch with a darker blue and a smaller brush. I really wanted to try and clean up these sketches a little bit more, and I actually cleaned up the face of the sketch, which is something I have ignored the last few times I've done these. I didn't really know if I was going to like adding this extra step in here, but I actually ended up really liking the way that the final pieces looked a lot more. Last thing I did was adding a couple more values to some of the clothes that I'd colored in with that darker blue and finishing up with the face, and with that the first pose is done. This next one is probably the one that I enjoyed working on the least. I just kept messing this one up. I think I started this one over 3 times maybe. I still don't think that I fully got it accurate, but it was just for practice, so I'm trying not to focus on it too much. I followed the same steps for this one that I did for the first one, and I did the sketch first and then I went back over it with the darker blue and I cleaned it up a little bit more. I think that I'm missing part of the recording for this one, so I think this one was a little bit shortened for the first one, so that's the end for pose number 2. This third pose was another standing one, but this one was a little bit more dynamic than the first one. I think especially with the way the legs were. It also had an arm that was bent, which was a good change from the mainly straight arms of the first pose. And I think that arms in more bent positions are definitely something I need to practice a little bit more, so it was good to have in this next pose. Now I'm going over this sketch and adding in those values again in the light blue. I think that using a really light color was a little bit more annoying for doing this part than I thought it would be. The brush I was using for this was pressure sensitive, and the last time I used it, it got a really good range of values for the color, but this time, since it was really light, I don't think that there was as much of a difference. So next time, I think that I might start with a more like mid-tone value instead of a super light one like I did for this. I think that all the faces for these came out pretty good. I always feel like I struggle a little bit with the faces when I do these. For one thing, I'm trying to focus on the whole body and not just the face. And then also I put a bunch of smaller drawings on one canvas, so the faces end up being really tiny, which makes it a little bit more challenging. The last thing I did to finish this pose was to add the darker tones before it was all done. This last pose was another one that kind of gave me a hard time for some reason. I don't know if it was because I was trying to squeeze it onto the last part of the canvas or what, but I kept having problems with the proportions and the legs, and I ended up adjusting them a lot more than the other poses while I was working on it. Even though I think this one did end up being the most sketchy and like messy, I was really happy with how the left arm specifically turned out. That was like the one part of this that I was like not annoyed with the whole time I was working on it. But anyway, now I'm working on the cleanup stage, and I also moved it a little bit closer to the other ones, and I made some more adjustments again. The last step was to add in the larger dark blue sections, and once I filled those in, all the poses were done. I think that this set of poses is definitely my favorite of the ones that I've done so far. I think that I just like the way that these came out overall, and I also quite like that these ones actually have faces that aren't just scribbles. But yeah, I really like this approach even if it added an extra step, and I think that I'll expand on it the next time I do some of these.